Hello, John Feldt here. This is the Blue Water Outlook, weekly water outlook for the Midwest. Well, it's been an extremely interesting week across the Midwest for a number of reasons. Look at all the rain that fell over the area. Yellow represents 2 inches or more of rain. Red equals 5 inches or more of rain, and the darker orange between that's 4 inches. And sometimes when you look at precipitation, it's not so much the exceptional amounts or the isolated amounts, but to me, when I look at this, I look at how widespread the 4-inch rains were. I'm going to sort of outline it here very roughly. And what you can see is a very large area received a very soaking and heavy rain. And when I look at that, I immediately think of agricultural concerns. I think of flooding. So a very significant rain over parts of the Midwest. Now further off to the west, much lighter over western parts of Nebraska and Kansas. Lighter precipitation, sort of a mix of rain and snow over parts of South Dakota, and some more significant rain and snow over areas further to the north. Now, if I look at percent of normal precipitation, you might say, well, how unusual was this? But if you look at that dark purple, I think it shows that it was 6 times normal of rainfall over that area for that 1 week period. So there's been a number of issues with all this rain, both in the short term and the long term. I also want to point out areas that need rain. More rain did not receive rain, and sometimes that's just as important from a drought perspective. You look at that area of red, that's well below normal rain for the week over western parts of the Midwest. Taking a quick look at stream flow here from the big picture, blue is much above normal stream flow, and black is flood stage or very high stream flow. And look at how high rivers are running over large parts of the central part of the Midwest, from Missouri up towards the Great Lakes region. Then further to the west, you can see gradually gets more into the green, which is normal. And we still have some areas of below normal stream flow over western parts of the Midwest, such as Nebraska and parts of Kansas. So, as you might suspect, we have the potential for some very significant flooding over parts of the Mississippi River drainage, parts of northern Illinois, parts of Indiana. And the areas to really focus on are the areas of red and purple. Red indicates moderate flooding. Purple is major flooding, especially major flooding, those areas of purple. That indicates where there could be some secondary roads inundated. There could be some property that would be inundated. So definitely that band of heavy rain that sort of fell right in this area here. You can see that got into the river systems, and we are expecting major flooding in those regions. Now, soil moisture, this is a trend that started over the winter months and it continues. Just wanted to point out that green are very wet soils and the yellows are drier soils. So there's a very abrupt line here over the Midwest. Western parts of the region are experiencing still drier than normal soil moisture and needs more rain or maybe snow. And over the east, we're in a situation now where soils are saturated and it's going to take a while to percolate down or evaporate, and we really need a break from precipitation. So it's very complex now. We have a very interesting situation from west to east where some spots need more rain, other spots desperately don't need rain. So we look at those percent of soil moisture. I just wanted to point out that area of green that received the rain from a soil moisture standpoint, we're at 90 to 95% of normal. So we're running very high percentile for this time of year in that region. And keep in mind, this is a time of year that soil moisture is wet. So even in a time of the year when soil moisture should be wet, it's unusually wet in those areas. Now, if we get out to the western parts of Nebraska, parts of South Dakota, western Kansas, you again see that it's well below normal, and it's only in the anywhere from 1 to 5% percentile for soil moisture. Now, there's still some snow on the ground, quite a bit actually over the northern area right here, and water equivalents are still quite significant. Purple there represents at least 3 to 6 inches, and that will be melting not all that far down the road, and there will be some potential for some significant flooding, but it's going to be limited to a fairly small area when that melts. Quick update of the drought monitor here goes along with what I'm saying, where we go from very abruptly from either a light drought or no drought conditions to very significant drought still in the areas of red. Now, last week I talked about the Arctic Oscillation going positive, and it did. You can see right now that we're close to the top range of the positive Arctic Oscillation, and pretty much it's going to dip back into normal conditions over the next week. And I also mentioned that likelihood of below normal temperatures this week, and this is the past 7 days below normal temperatures. And you can see, with the exception of the eastern U.S. and parts of the Ohio River Valley, the rest of the region was well below normal as far as temperatures go. Okay, so let's talk about the next couple of weeks. Well, with that positive Arctic Oscillation, the jet stream has lifted north, and that has enhanced that jet stream energy over our area, and that's why we've received so much dynamic type energy and precipitation. This week it looks like the jet will remain up to the north, but the energy will not be quite as strong, so I don't see it nearly as much focused heavy precipitation. It looks like more scattered, more modest type precipitation over parts of the Midwest, and even though there could be some pockets of heavy rain this time of year, it doesn't look anything like last week. Now, I do want to mention that the areas of low pressure, these are the tracks of low pressure, and they are coming across the Midwest, and precipitation is usually enhanced in the northern quadrant of this low, so these regions here could get enhanced precipitation. And right now the lows are not all that strong, so that's not going to produce a whole lot of low-level energy, but it will be enough to enhance precipitation in the form of rain or snow over the Great Lakes region at times during this week. So here's the rainfall forecast, or the snow forecast, and you can see it's much more modest than last week. Over most of the Midwest, it's in the range from a ½ inch to maybe a couple inches of rainfall. And I think one thing here is, with the energy somewhat on the low side or on the light side in intensity, I think there's a somewhat of an uncertainty as to these amounts. I think there's more uncertainty than normal as far as how much rain might occur. But I think with the weakness of the systems, there won't be nearly as much moisture drawn into the Midwest. So I do think the story this week will be more modest precipitation versus last week's excessive precipitation. And I wanted to point out, looking ahead to week 2, this is the second week, 2 weeks out, there is the potential for more action in the central part of the Midwest, perhaps that receives some heavier rain, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio. Perhaps some rain or snow again in the upper Midwest. But again, I think this is more modest type system. And keep in mind, whenever I talk about a week 2 forecast, a whole lot of uncertainty in week 2. But I do want to say that it's not going to necessarily shut off, but I think we're going back towards more normal type precipitation over the next couple weeks over some areas. And I still think there's a need for a lot more rain over western parts of the Midwest. So the takeaway points this week's briefing: there will be a major flood threat for parts of the Mississippi River drainage as well as northern Illinois. The upper soils are very wet over the upper Midwest, and there will be some rain or snow events throughout the week. Snow far north, rain over the middle part of the Midwest. Elsewhere, just scattered precipitation, and definitely much more modest amounts than last week. But I think when we look at the next 2 weeks, it looks like, generally speaking, the rain that we get will not be enough rainfall to enhance the crests on the rivers. There will be more rain, but the impact most likely will be to slow the recession. I doubt that it will be enough to bring to new crests. If you have any questions at all on this briefing, feel free to email me at any time. I can be reached at john@bluewateroutlook.com. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have that I wasn't able to answer on this briefing. Again, thanks for listening. I'll be talking with you again next week.